Welcome to Rewatch and Rank. On this channel, we rewatch older TV shows, provide a summary and opinion on the episode before ranking each episode against each other. Today's episode is Deathnote Part 1, Episode 3, Dealings. For our episode in a nutshell, it's just a quick summary of 1 to 2 lines telling exactly what happens within this episode. Elle begins to get clues to Kira's identity, while Light tries to both give him clues and set him up for defeat at the same time. We'll now go through this episode scene by scene and give our opinion on each part. We open the episode on the police having a meeting going over the investigation's progress and the various tips that have come in. But unfortunately, no one who has provided any tips knows anything that was unreleased to the public. Mogi, who is giving the report, also notes that they've had 21 people claiming to be Kira so far. The next report is by an unnamed police officer, and it is on the victims. The officer looks to Elle's laptop, still carried around by Watari, stating that they also investigated the times of death per Elle's request, finding that they occurred around school hours, weekends, and holidays. Elle claims the information's interesting, stating that the criminal may be a student. Other grounds are that the killer has an idealistic sense of justice and may even have a god complex, which indicates a childish mentality. But he stresses it's just a possibility, telling the task force not to discount any possibility. Suichiro then asks if anyone else has noticed anything, and Matsuda gets up the courage to raise his hand. He then stands and relays that as a result of Kira, violent crime is down worldwide, but especially within Japan, while the other cops look anywhere but at him. Suichiro claims it's to be expected, quickly asking if there's anything else, and when there isn't, he wraps up the meeting. Elle thanks everyone, but makes another request for the police to investigate how the victims' identities were made public, especially if the faces were shown. With this one, he does kind of give his grounds for why he thinks it was a student, but why not a teacher? Like, if you're going around school hours, it could just as easily be a teacher who maybe didn't grow up and that's why they didn't leave school. Although he does just go on to stress that he's just bringing up the possibility as a way to keep an open mind. But this is one of those in the last episode where I was talking about how they kind of make assumptions because the writers know who is who, that they would just jump, oh, it could potentially be a student because we know it's a student. But I feel like in reality, your first instinct, if it's around school hours, would be it's a teacher, as making more sense. But that's just my opinion personally. After the meeting, Suichiro stretches out in the hall as Matsuda brings him a cup of coffee. Suichiro mentions that he's been pulling a lot of all-nighters lately, and Matsuda then apologizes for bringing up the crime rates, as everybody already knows, and it was unnecessary. Suichiro comforts him, telling him that he needs to keep speaking the truth, especially about things that people hesitate to bring up, before joking about how if he had gone on to support Kira, it would have been a different story. And Matsuda refutes he would never support a murderer. Again, this is a scene I don't really have much to say about. It's just a little snippet where we get clarity on Matsuda's discomfort and bringing it up in the actual meeting. Ryuk watches as Light tutors Sayu, who quickly abandons her studies as soon as they hear Suichiro arrive home downstairs. As he heads down to dinner, Light tells Ryuk that he has an advantage over the police, should they come after him, before greeting Suichiro, who's taking off his shoes. The family has dinner, where Light is praised for his good grades, and he then points out that his dad's looking tired. And Suichiro begins talking about his current cases being very stressful. Ryuk, who's hovering behind Light, realizes why Light is so confident, and that's because of his dad. And later, Light tells him how he can use his dad's computer, or use his own computer to hack his father's police files, to then keep track of the investigation without leaving any trace. Light then hacks into the files, and when he brings them up, Light tells Ryuk that the police are beginning to suspect a student, and Ryuk asks if that means he's in trouble. Light reminds him of the rule in the Death Note that if the cause of death is written within 40 seconds of writing the person's name, it will happen. If the cause of death is not specified, the person will simply die of a heart attack. After writing cause of death, details of the death should be written in the next 6 minutes and 40 seconds. Deciding to play with the times of death going forward, Light tells Ryuk he may be able to provide a little more entertainment for him. Honestly, I am a little bit unsure why Light only takes advantage of the rules when he's needed or pushed to by the investigation, rather than just taking them from the start. He's supposed to be the top student in Japan. He's supposed to be a genius. He should be using everything at his disposal. Obviously, I understand that it is a plot device to ease the audience in to the rules of the note and how they may be able to be used, but from a not getting caught perspective, it really would have made more sense for him to be using all of the rules as they go and then just explain it to us in little snippets, rather than having Light just adapt to the situation as it comes, but not take any proactive steps to avoid getting caught. So in this scene, Light just casually goes about his school day. He plays some sports at gym class, he takes some notes, he walks home casually, he laughs with other students, and all the while, coming in and out are criminals dying in their cells, one after another, after another, after another. It's a very short scene, but I love how casual Light is about it. He's just like totally unbothered. And then the music. I mentioned it before in another episode, but the soundtrack, this is where it really comes through because the music makes it. The music is everything, especially in a scene like this one where there isn't any dialogue or any other action. 10 out of 10. Back with the task force, Sorichiro is surprised to learn that there were 23 new victims the day before, one every hour, and it's happened 2 weekdays straight. And some of the detectives suggest this has made their suspicion of a student faulty, while another suggests that they just skip school. Elle interrupts, saying that it could make the suspicion of a student faulty, but that isn't the message Kira is trying to send. He then asks them, why every hour? Why in prison where they can be easily found? Elle answers his own questions, that Kira is telling them that he can freely control the time of death. Then Elle muses to himself that something still isn't right because, as soon as they suspected a student, Kira changed his behavior to contradict the theory, and he then realizes that Kira has access to what the police know, taking it as a direct challenge to himself. But then it cuts to Light bragging to Ryuk about Elle probably panicking and realizing the police connection. Elle muses that he can't, well, we're back with Elle again. Elle muses he can't ignore the fact, wondering about Kira's true objective. Back with Light, Ryuk reasonably is concerned about lessening the suspect pool, but Light says his reason is that it will help him find Elle so he can finish him off, highlighting the lack of trust between Elle and the police and banking on a negative reaction when the police realize they are being investigated, which will turn them against each other. And Light plans to let the police find out Elle's identity for him. Now, I understand that the entire plot is a cat and mouse game between Light and Elle, but as with an earlier scene, why did he not use all the tools in his arsenal from the start? Light is meant to be the top student in the country. How does he miss that hacking the police and then immediately changing his behavior isn't going to reveal a police connection? Of course, that is what he says he wants, but like again, I'm trying to think about this from a if this was real and not a TV show, if this was actually somebody who's the top student trying not to get caught, is this the behavior that they would do? Fact of the matter is, so what if they think it's a student? There are thousands of students, and that means he probably wouldn't be caught very quickly. Additional to that, there is the fact that he is the top student with a good reputation, son of the police chief, very unlikely to be suspected in the first round of questioning students. That would be the delinquents first that they would investigate. But amongst all the students, there are very few probably who would have any sort of access to know the course of the investigation. And Light says he narrowed the pool on purpose, which is even dumber because he's narrowing the suspect pool he's a part of. And then he says it's to help him find L. But why does he think there won't always be somebody to replace L? L is just one detective. There's still the entire police force. There's all the other crime-fighting organizations, armies. There's always going to be somebody who is going to replace L. How does he know that L doesn't have heirs? Hint, hint, wink, wink. How does he not know? Like, he doesn't know anything. So why is he focusing so hard on L? Again, I get that it's a cat and mouse game. That's the entire point of the show. But just from this perspective, there's always going to be another L. So why narrow your pool? Whoever takes over for L will also have that. And now you'll be at a disadvantage in the next round. It's a far smarter option to avoid getting caught in the first place, to avoid giving any evidence away. And additionally, why not use the information that you got from the police? They suspect a student. So why not fudge the times? Keep using a student's schedule and maybe keep using it for the next 4 years, 5 years. Make them think it's someone way younger than you. Or maybe make them think, keep using the student schedule, and then over summer, have the times go all over the place, and then make it look like, oh, this person's graduated, they're now on a part-time job. Maybe they're not, going on to university. Maybe fudge a schedule for a work thing to have them go to people who are on other jobs. Use the knowledge that they are looking at the times to your advantage. You have time. You're not going to be the main suspect if they suspect all the students. It just doesn't make sense from a perspective of you don't want to get caught. And if this was reality, it makes no sense. Of course, again, I will reiterate, I understand that in this series, it is a cat and mouse game. That is why they make the decisions that they do. But really, it just doesn't make sense from a reality perspective, is all I'm saying. Back in the police force's current Cure investigation headquarters, there are 3 cops that decide that they are going to tender their resignation. They ask to be switched to other cases, or if they can't be switched, then they want to quit. And when Srichiro asks why, they state that they value their lives. And according to L, Kira kills through supernatural means. And one says if he was Kira, he would try to kill those trying to catch him. Another then notes how L challenged Kira to kill him, but had anonymity to hide behind, having not given his face or name to the public. They also note that after L asked to confirm how the victim's info was made public, it was confirmed that both names and faces were made public. And unlike someone, L, they know that, police carry IDs. So they are known, they are well known, and their identity is easily found out. So during the investigation, they are at a higher risk and out in the open. They then leave, ignoring Srichiro's calls to wait while L watches all of it through his computer screen. Now, to be honest, my assumption is the opposite of that cops. If I was Kira, I would be keeping track of the investigation, but avoiding coming to the notice of those trying to catch me or harming those trying to catch me. I would not be trying to kill them. One, because I would be the moral villain who would be only killing the criminals. So you don't kill the police officers who also try to catch criminals. They're on your side. They believe the same as you do. You don't want to get rid of like-minded individuals. Also, again, you don't want to be caught. So keep track of the investigation. Make sure you maintain your access to it. Make your plots and your plans according to the information that you get, but don't interfere, don't interact. That would be my path, not I'm gonna go kill all the good guys, for lack of a better word. The good guys fighting the criminals alongside me. I don't think that makes sense. I think his assumption was very baseless, but it could just be cultural differences too. Light attends his prep course at night after it's gotten dark. Ryoku's just, again, idly lurking around the classroom, notices something and makes his way towards the windows through the classroom, and Light completely ignores him as he passes. Outside, we then see a trench-coated figure from the window, standing in a spotlight, a street light that shines a spotlight down onto him. Meanwhile, Watari informs Elle that the FBI agents have arrived to investigate all of those who are connected to the police and the police officers themselves who are associated to the case. Elle looks at a stack of profiles, musing that Kira must be connected to one of them, and the camera, well, in this case it's a cartoon, so the drawing, the screen, focuses on Soichiro's profile. Again, don't have much to say, pretty self-explanatory scene in this case. After Light finishes his prep course, he's walking home, while Ryuk is hovering above him and says he needs to tell him something. And Light reminds him to speak to him as little as possible while they are in public. Ryuk says he's going to tell him anyways. He then tells him that he doesn't have anything against him and thinks the note found the right person. And he has to stick around him until the note or Light are finished. But it makes it very clear he is not on his or Elle's side. Light, trying to speak under his breath so he doesn't look like a crazy person, says he knows that already. Rook then continues, that's why he'll never say if what he's doing is right or wrong. But he's telling him this, not as a Shinigami, but as his roommate. Light tells him to say it, saying that he's not acting like himself. Rook then reiterates, he isn't saying this as an ally of Kira, but because it's creeping him out. Light says to get to the point already, and Rook then chuckles, saying, someone's been following him all this time, causing Light to pause on the street. And we see the cloaked or trench-coated figure also pause, and then hide quickly behind a wall or a corner. Light then resumes walking, while Ryuk tells him he's been getting on his nerves. He can't see him, obviously, because Rook is invisible, but because he's always with Light, and usually hovering behind him, he feels like he's the one being watched. Light says it's a problem, and he'll have to get rid of him soon. Now, in this case, Rook kind of goes around and around to try to make sure that his position's very clear. And I love that he's calling himself a roommate. He wasn't invited, he doesn't pay rent, but that just amuses me. And it's all of this going around. I'm not your ally. I'm not telling you this for these reasons. But hey, you're being followed. It amuses me. I like this back and forth. I like the banter-ish. Well, it's not really banter, it's just Ryuk being funny, which he is a very funny character. It's why he's my second favorite after L. Light, unfortunately, gets third place, in case anybody was wondering. Once he's back home, Light muses on who the figure could possibly have been, wondering if it's proof that L's begun to suspect the police. He muses that he is unlikely to be suspected at first, but thinks that if he leaves it alone, the possibility may not remain at zero. So he decides that he has to get the stalker's name, and once he has the name, then he can get rid of him. Ryuk then informs Light that two main differences exist between Shinigami and humans, especially humans who own a Deathnote. One is that Shinigami gain lifespan when they kill someone. So even if they are shot or stabbed, they will not die. Humans, however, do not gain any lifespan by writing names in the Deathnote. The second difference is that a Shinigami's eyes can see the names and remaining lifespan above the heads of all humans. He even knows Light's remaining lifespan, but he won't tell him. He then reveals that Light can get the same eyes as him by making a deal that has been passed down since ancient times, which is half of the human's remaining lifespan in exchange for getting the Shinigami's eyes. Light then confirms that because Ryuk is not on anyone's side, he won't tell him the names of those he wants to kill, meaning he can't count on his help. Ryuk confirms that this is the case, and it's part of the Shinigami Code before offering the deal again to Light. Light muses on how it will make using the Death Note easier. Again, it's annoying, but Light is again needlessly trying to narrow down the pool of suspects. Obviously, if you... So his morals are not as great as we thought. Episode 1, they tried to establish, oh, he's going to kill criminals. Every episode after that, they've basically gone back on that and went, nope, nope. Actually, criminals are his side hustle. He's actually after all the detectives. And now he's trying to go after this person who is obviously probably hired by L and watching him specifically. So when he kills them, it's going to narrow the pool. If they can figure out the leak, it's going to narrow the pool, and he's going to be even more of a suspect, which is just, again, objectively, like if this was reality, that's just so dumb. And he's supposed to be a genius. This also is our first cliffhanger ending. He's been offered a deal. He hasn't accepted it. He hasn't denied it either. And I have to wonder, if I was offered the ideal, would I take it? No, no, I wouldn't. I like my life. I don't want to give up half of it. So this, of course, then brings us to the end of this episode. And now we're moving on to our rankings. Again, I will say this every episode, but we rank on two separate lists. One is my personal list, which is based purely on my personal feelings and opinions on the episode, and there is no influence beyond what I want and what I think. The other list is our mostly objective ranking list. Why is it mostly objective? It's objective because it's based on a chart. So no matter how much I hate the episode, if it meets the chart's quality that or standards, then it's getting a high score, regardless. However, I made the chart. I decide what in the chart applies to the episode. That's bias, that's judgment. That's why it's mostly objective. All right, so our chart of mostly objective rank values is on screen, and I've highlighted that which I feel applies to this particular episode. So first off, I feel like world building applies because we are introduced to this ideal, which we didn't know about before. And then we also have what I consider a single arc main character development. And this is where we get insight into L's connections and his influence by his ability to call in the FBI, which is not a Japanese organization, but an American one. So it shows that he has a breadth of influence, a breadth of connections out there in the world, which also could tie into world building as well. World building is worth 4 points, and the single arc main character development is worth 2 points, which brings us up to 6 points. However, there are some negatives. First is the excess of exposition. They literally explain the ideal multiple times in different ways. With the quitting detectives, they basically recap the entire case so far. It's only episode 3. It is far too soon for us to need a recap. Even if we're a younger audience, which I don't think this is geared towards really young audiences, so you would assume at least preteen or up. So again, I don't think at episode 3 we quite needed that whole recap. And again, the ideal, multiple times, reiterated, reiterated, reiterated. It's a bit much, so that's a -1. And then, of course, there's the character regression, and I'm finally putting that down. Light started, I'm killing criminals. I'm creating a new world with earnest, kind humans. Now he's like, I'm killing all the earnest, kind humans that already exist that are trying to stop me. His judgment is extremely questionable. Also, he's supposed to be a genius. The premise was established. He's #1 in Japan. He's supposed to be a genius, yet he makes dumb choices lots of dumb choices, and narrows his pool down to make himself a suspect. It's a regression from what the premise established in the first episode to where we are now. And that again is another -1 point. So that leaves us with our first non 10 out of 10 episode, and this one is only 4 out of 10. All right, so far, our part 1 rankings so far are going in episode order. We start with Rebirth, the next ranked is Confrontation, and now in third place we have Dealings. This also holds true on the personal ranking side. My personal ranking was a smidge better than the objective one. I ranked it at a 5. I ranked it at a 5 out of 10 because I did enjoy the comedy. Ryuk's comedy, especially when he was being stalked, I found that hilarious. I like that we got introduced to the ideal. I like that we get to see L in shadow on his side of the screen for a change, which L's my favorite character. So anytime he's on screen, I'm like, automatically, it's a great episode. There's a positive there. But on the negative side, again, the cop meetings, they're boring. When the task force is meeting, giving the reports, I understand why it's there. We have to see both sides of this cat and mouse game, but it's boring. So there was a lot of it in this episode. Light's decisions, of course, we've already noted that this episode may be a little bit more ranty than some of the other ones I've gone on. I ranted a bit more. I had a lot more to say on some scenes. This is because he's making questionable choices. And it's throwing doubts on premise of his character that we established in the first episode. It's annoying. Like, it's just objectively annoying. And that's a negative emotion, so that's going to bring the score down. I decided it was perfectly average. The good and the bad, they canceled each other out, so we ended up with a 5 out of 10 for this episode, which puts it again in last place on my list as well. In the series ranking portion, we're ranking each part against each other, so we won't know the final scores until we finish the entire series. But for right now, we're going to add today's scores to the total so far. So in part 1, there are 26 episodes, so there is a maximum score of 260 that can be achieved. With the mostly objective score of 4, we now have it at 24 out of 260. And then the personal ranking, we've ranked it at a 5, totally average score, for a total of 21 out of 260. Once we finish the series, we will then know the percentage score for each of the parts, and the higher percentage will be the one that we consider to be better, or that is mostly objectively better, as it were. And with that, we've rewatched and ranked Death Note Part 1, Episode 3, Dealings. Like and subscribe if you'd like to, and I'll see you in the next episode.